So I almost went to bed, but I had to edit this really, really fast. I want to make a quick TLDR on the exact neutral of how this needs to be looking. I realize that we talk a lot about a lot of different things, but I don't necessarily go in detail with the neutral as I would have liked. So what I would like to do is kind of break down exactly what that's going to look like. So whenever we're playing this composition, everything revolves around Winston Bubble. So when the Winston is pressuring with Bubble, that means that his team needs to be taking the attention that he's forcing and using that time to pressure. Oftentimes that's the Winston and Reaper stacking together when the Winston doesn't want to dive very deep. 3, 2, 1, explode around the corner. Winston places Bubble, and then Reaper's going to actually use that Bubble to shoot the enemy Winston or the enemy Reaper. The team that does this timing better, the Reaper that uses Bubble better, if a Sojourn is able to take an off angle at the same time and hit a shot, or the Lucio, the friendly Lucio, is able to boop the enemy Reaper or Winston away so that they get a better HP trade. If the Kiriko can take this timing and also take an off angle and be able to put in a good shot on the enemy Reaper or in the enemy Sojourn, this is how you win the fight, is everybody matching this Winston Bubble timing and finding ways to create value. Usually Winston Reaper are going off at the same timing and often on the same target, but like let's say our Winston has Primal and doesn't want to go for frontline. Maybe he wants to go deep onto backline with Primal. Well, then my Reaper, who doesn't want to follow because it's too deep, he can't wraith back to his team, will take that opportunity to push the enemy Winston very hard, knowing that he's not getting support from his backline because his backline is getting primaled. So it's all about people and teams finding perfect timings to pressure early on. The teams, as I mentioned later in this review, that are able to synchronize the pressure at the same time, whether it's going in or out. If you mess up, you lose a cooldown trade, you lose an HP trade. Being able to all hive mind, all out, all in or out are the ones that are going to be able to win this. The worst thing that you can do is have a Winston utilize Bubble or utilize some for a pressure cycle and his Reaper is AFK, or his Sojourn is AFK, or the Kiriko wasn't there yet, or the Winston Bubble was wasted, and then instead of disengaging and playing slow because they have a Bubble disadvantage, they play just normally as if everything's fine, and then they end up losing the next trade. It's all about timing, teamwork, ins and outs. The only other thing I'd say, shout out to my good friend Egoist Cat, passive advantage is about utilizing early positions to get a cooldown advantage. So it's all about the team that gets a cooldown advantage, but the question is how do you get that cooldown advantage? How do you get that HP advantage? You just hit more shots? Well, not just that. The team that's better able to utilize my favorite word, angles, and timing usually gets a passive advantage. For example, if I have my Winston Reaper pressuring in and my Sojourn is stacked behind them, pre-fight, probably she's not going to have a good angle to get a lot of pressure because the enemy team will be able to utilize cover. But let's say the enemy team is all stacked up, but my Sojourn, instead of stacking with my Winston Reaper on main, she's actually taking an off angle and is able to shoot the enemy before the fight starts without getting her cooldown forced. She can get early pressure that then chunks the enemy HP, maybe forces a Suzu, maybe forces a Bubble, maybe just forces a Lucio amp that allows us to be able to follow up afterwards. And you'll see this even with Kiriko, who doesn't do a lot of damage but has good range. Early fight, taking angles that doesn't compromise her healing but allows her to get just a little bit of extra damage that gives him an HP and a cooldown trade going into the fight. And what you guys can start to do is you can start to look for teams that are wasting cooldowns pre-fight that don't get actual pressure. In this review, we point out Kevster, who seems to really struggle, at least on Lijiang Tower, to find value out of Sojourn. He does a really bad job about using Sojourn E, and this allows London to get a big cooldown advantage mid-fight. We even look at later in the stream, not on this video, but we look at different Kirikos who play less and more aggressive positions, trying to get that early HP advantage early on. So it's crucial that the team is not only good at in and out, but good at in these neutral pre-fight situations as things are setting up, trying to take safe angles so that they can use 0 cooldowns and force 1 cooldown. And the way you can also think about this as well is a team that is better reliant of timing once the engage starts. If the Winston explodes around the corner with Winston Bubble and they all focus down the enemy Reaper with their own Winston Bubble, if they will obviously force the enemy Winston Bubble, but if their target focus is good enough and their timing is good enough, they might even get the Reaper Wraith through. And this is how you start winning fights. You used 1 cooldown and you forced 2. Better teams with better timing, better mechanics, and better angles will use fewer cooldowns for a much bigger return on your investment. And that's how you win fights. You can't just dive and kill people in this comp. There's too many defensive cooldowns. It's about getting those advantages so that later on you're able to actually finish those kills off. Hope that makes sense. Enjoy the video. Chat. The great thing about this composition for you guys to spectate is, as visually confusing as it's going to be for you, the execution is very... Oh, I need to turn on spectate toggle overlay. Give me just a second, y'all. The very simple way of looking at it is very similar to two compositions that we have already seen. One is the Moira, Sombra, Reaper, Winston, Diva, Lucio composition in Overwatch 1. You guys remember that one? Talon Dive. This is very similar to Talon Dive in its execution of it's a mobile short range composition, okay? Very mobile, very short range. Big cooldown trades, going back and forth. Now that leads me to the second composition that it's very similar to. It is very similar to the Junker Queen mirror and the fact that you have two teams trading, looking to get an advantage that they can then push with their cooldowns. The most important cooldowns in the field are going to be Winston Bubble, Amp, Wraith, E, and Suzu. You may have noticed I picked a cooldown from each hero. That's because they're all extremely powerful in doing one of two things. Every single one of those cooldowns has either an aggressive use or a defensive use. So the goal of either comp is to do one of two things. Number one, you need to try and get a cooldown advantage or an HP advantage in the neutral. And then number two is having the skill and capability and visual recognition to see that you have an advantage or see that you have a disadvantage and then be able to react to that information accordingly. For example, the best teams are not only going to consistently get cooldown and HP advantages because of how they're positioning, how they're using their cooldowns, or just straight up mechanics, but then the best teams are then be able to recognize that advantage and then be able to push it. And then if they mess up, this is crucial. This is crucial. The best teams recognize when they are at a disadvantage. Shoot, guys, we've messed up. Let's not stay and die for this. Let's get out of dodge. Because the difference between giving space and getting wiped is unbelievable. Sojourn, I'm sorry, yes. And the great thing about this is you can push with your Reaper Wraith. You can defensively bubble. You can aggressively bubble. You can aggressively TP in and then Suzu the floor. You can Suzu an enemy push. You can Sojourn E enemy backline. You can Sojourn E your team to make it difficult for them to walk forward. You can amp in. You can amp out. So the questions we have to ask is, how are teams positioning? How are teams using cooldowns? Who are teams focusing? How are teams rotating to get those cooldown advantages so that they can win fights? And then which teams are best at recognizes those advantages and those disadvantages? Okay? Does that make sense? So, for example, if, let's say, Hadi messes up his bubble and he gets headshot by Kevster, crap, I had to use bubble, they have bubble advantage. If Spitfire stay at this choke, it would be the equivalent of the previous meta, Junker Queen Shout getting forced by a Sojourn headshot, wow, familiar, and just standing here when you have a shot disadvantage. That is a mistake. He would have to disengage to the next quarter or maybe even further out. So, that is the neutral in a nutshell. It is about finding the angles of positions so that you can get a cooldown advantage that you can either push or that you recognizing when you have a cooldown disadvantage so you can disengage. And it goes back and forth. Very push-pull. This always happens with Lucio metas. All right? So, my theory... Now, let me be very transparent with you guys. I don't have a lot of inside information on this. This is only based off of the knowledge that I have before. I know a little bit. I have a little bit of insider information, which has helped me come to this conclusion. But it's fairly evident from the get-go. We can guess that things like Reapers playing short, tight sightline flanks and trying to focus on shooting the monkey without peeking the Sojourn is going to be a big thing. We can guess that monkeys not using bubble without peeking, without the Reaper being with them are important. We can surmise that it is likely that Kirikos and Sojourns will probably be taking slight off angles to be able to pressure the enemy Winston or the enemy Reaper out early, because if you get early pressure early, that's how you get cooldown advantages. That's how you get HP advantages. Remember, the better teams with Junker Queen comp were the teams that took better angles with their DPS. And better angles with DPS means that you do more damage. More damage means you force more cooldowns. You force more cooldowns, you can then push with your cooldowns after and win the fight. So then let's stop right here for just a second and let's get to questions. Let's get to the questions. A lot of team wipes happen because of Reaper Death Blossom. Why not run D.Va? Okay, here's the thing. Every composition has two forms in evolution. There is the this is the best versus the counter comps composition, and this is the best comp in the mirror. You guys, the best example I can give you guys of this is Goats. Goats is the Reinhardt, D.Va, Zarya, Lucio, Brig, and Moira composition. Okay? The teams ran Moira because Zen wasn't very good versus DPS. Now, over time, teams got better at packing and peeling, but it was just better to just have a big, stupid, unkillable healer and run enemies down with Moira. She was the best versus spam and dive and things like that. But over time, once everyone gave up stopping trying to counter it and just ran Goats themselves, people realized that Moira really wasn't that good versus the other Brawl heroes. It was better to get away and try and get greedy with Zenyatta and Ana and so on, right? Now, this comp, if the Gladiators ran out on Pharmercy, Pharah, Tracer, Ball, whatever, Backbone would not be on Reaper. And there's also a pretty high chance that Hadi would not be on Winston. So the question is, why is D.Va not played? Well, can D.Va deal with Reaper? Yeah, sure. But the problem with D.Va is she just doesn't do anything unless there's a Reaper directly in front of her face. Winston Bubble does more aggressively, and nobody on your team necessarily and only relies on D.Va. What would happen if teams ran D.Va is these guys would go, oh my gosh, there's actually no dive threat from the enemy team at all, right? If you are playing Kiriko, Lucio, Sojourn, and the enemy team is on a D.Va, you're not scared of Jack. Nothing. D.Va dive isn't scary enough, is not as scary as a Winston with Bubble or Primal. So then you no longer need to run Reaper. You could run anything else. You could go to Tracer. You could go to another hit scan hero. You could go, I mean, Genji's not very good right now, but you theoretically could even run Genji. You would, by running D.Va, you would let Spitfire run greedier and greedier variations of the same comp. So D.Va does better versus Winston, yes, but it opens up the opportunity for you to play a lot more greedy heroes because the D.Va doesn't deal with them as well as the threat of a Winston dive. Now you're thinking, doesn't D.Va deal with hit scan? Yes, but a Winston dive does better. A Winston dive does better. Because the thing is, chat, remember, with this composition that they're running right now, if the Winston dives is squishy, who can follow? Who can follow in Spitfire's comp? If Gladiators came out here with Sojourn Ashe or something greedier, right? Even a Genji, everybody in this comp can follow through. So the reason why teams are playing D.Va, and I promise you that teams have tried D.Va in scrims, I promise you. And so it was death by 1,000 paper cuts. It allowed the enemy team to play something other than Reaper that felt a little better, which the D.Va was worse at. It allowed the other teams to play more greedy with their Sojourn because she was under no threat of dive. They allowed teams to play a little bit more greedy because when the ult economy came around, Primal was just not as good. Primal was significantly better than Diva Bomb versus the dive. It allowed teams to play a little bit of greedy because when the brawls actually happen, a Winston bubble, the way the composition worked, Winston bubble synergized better with the goals of the composition. So Winston is what gatekeeps other teams from playing greedy stuff. And in the short range brawls, which often happen, a bubble is better than Matrix. Does that make sense? Okay. It's not a big obvious answer why, and I promise you that a lot of teams have tried Diva. So don't feel stupid if you're like, I guess I see it, but it just feels tricky. It took a lot of teams, I'm sure, a lot of practice. That's a great example, Firo. That's exactly the problem with playing Diva. That's another problem, okay? Okay, so here's the thing, chat. Why is this meta all of a sudden? Why are teams not, let's continue to dissect. So let's just say, okay, Winston, Kiriko, Lucio, okay, whatever, that seems to be the way. Why is nobody playing on a Zen anymore? Why are teams not playing Reinhardt anymore? Why are teams not playing Zen Brig anymore? Why? You tell me. What has changed? What has changed? We literally went from just, obviously the Junker Queen meta is an outlier. But we just saw Ana Zen being meta, and before that Brig Zen, and people still being able to play Reinhardt. So what happened? Can I explain what it means by Winston wins a close range brawl? Bubble OP. Bubble's OP. Bubble's what allows your team in close range. Bubble is the most powerful cooldown in the game in close range. Anybody and everybody that's around the bubble gets value out of it. Kiriko can follow. This is it. Winston has always been good versus Ana Zen, obviously. But the fact that we now have, and I predicted this, I'm going to just ego a little bit here. I predicted this before she was even released. My question was, we've never seen a support that could follow a dive like Kiriko could. Kiriko happened. That's it. We've never seen a support that could actively follow a dive like we have with Kiriko. Your entire team jumps a Zen. The enemy tank zones your backline, prevents follow-up, and maybe even trades. Now you actively have a support that can not only go with you and support the dive, but can also contribute to it. With Suzu, with damage, with healing. You can't play, at least right now, teams have not figured out, but right now, you cannot play a spam hero versus this composition. Now, I'm exaggerating a little bit. It's theoretically possible, and maybe as teams get better and better, things will slow down and we might start to see spam heroes. But as of right now, teams have not been able to play spam or slow heroes, or ranged heroes, or immobile heroes, using my proper terminology here, against a Kiriko Rush. Moira can, and guess what, chat? Guess what? Moira is the other support that used to play in these comps, but Moira provides significantly less utility than Kiriko, and she can't reach as far as she can either. She can't reach as far. Kiriko can go from here to Funny Astro's position, guys. It's crazy. It's crazy. And she does damage along the way, has a better ultimate, and more consistent healing. And Kiriko can heal off angles. Moira can't, chat. Kiriko can heal off angles. She can heal the Sojourn 20 meters away. We've never had this before. Kiriko also have better verticality, exactly. So this is the crazy thing. This is the crazy thing. So now we have a composition that can all in any squishy and kill them if they can. If that squishy doesn't immediately have a defensive cooldown or a way of getting away, right? So this is why Kiriko is being played. She's got invulnerability, but the fact is that she can TP on anything and play anywhere without getting punished. We've never had a support that actively dives like Kiriko, not even Lucio. Lucio is definitely the most dive support before then in terms of like actively going in, but we've never had a support that can just in. Never. It's unbelievable. So, that's why this is meta right now. Because if you play anything else, it doesn't matter if it's Reinhardt with a BAP, the BAP will die. The BAP will die. We had a hard enough time playing Reinhardt before Kiriko, because at least the Reinhardt could shield off the Onanate, right? Or zone the enemy backline. You can't zone off, you can't shield off a Kiriko. Okay, so then let's keep going. Why Reaper and Sojourn? So Genji, first off, got nerfed. So that's the other thing to consider. Genji's a lot weaker right now, in this patch. Genji's nerfed. So then, chat, why Sojourn? Why Sojourn? Why are teams playing Sojourn? What is unique about Sojourn? Besides the fact that she's really, really strong, okay? So obviously, the hero is just fundamentally strong right now, okay? E is impactful, Railgun's impactful. She has mobility, exactly. There's a lot of reasons why. If you didn't say mobility, you're not wrong. There's a lot of reasons, other reasons why. But the reason why she matches with this comp is because, unlike other heroes, you cannot just dive her and kill her. Even if you bring the whole gang, she's going to shift away, get Kiriko heal, and she's fine. It's mobility and range, exactly. It's the ability to set up off angles and pressure off angles and get an HP advantage and fish for one shots, but she can't be punished for it. She can, but it is so much harder. Now, there are other heroes that can do that. A Genji can, but Genji's weak right now. He got nerfed. Ashe can't do that. Her shift is nowhere near as strong or as consistent. Widow can't, obviously. Cassie's shift is nowhere near as strong. There's nothing else that has that right now. Soldier, well, Soldier's shift is significantly weaker than her shift, and his ultimate is also weaker, and his heal station wouldn't be valuable either. So Soldier is a significantly weaker Sojourn versus the dive, okay? Now Soldier has more solo flank potential, but again, do you really want to solo flank against a composition with 5 mobility options? No, it doesn't work very well. Okay, so now we know why the Sojourn, we know why the Monkey, we know why the Kiriko. Lucio allows a team to push and pull, in case you guys don't understand that. It allows you to, if you get a cooldown advantage, you can push it. If you get a cooldown disadvantage, you can disengage. And he's also the only other support that wouldn't just immediately die. So that's the other plus. Now, why the Reaper? Why the Reaper? So you're asking, why Tracer? Okay, let me tell you, Tracer was tested a lot. And you might even see some Tracer, but maybe not, but Tracer was played a lot. And she did, as far as I know, reasonably well. Because she controls angles really well. Now chat, what is Tracer at better than a Reaper? Now Tracer's also not, to be very clear, Tracer isn't a particularly overpoweringly strong hero right now. So why is Tracer better? Uptime, sure. Pressuring backlines, sure. So what a lot of teams learned, from what I know, and what obviously I can surmise, is that a Tracer is going to do a better job at contesting the enemy Sojourn than a Reaper is. An enemy Tracer, theoretically, has a better and more consistent time of pressuring the enemy Kiriko than a Reaper. But the problem is that pressure on the enemy Sojourn wasn't consistent enough. Tracer's not super strong, and she was pretty easy to clear. Railgun body shot, Kiriko body shot, Kiriko headshot, Lucio spam. Pulse bomb is too easy to negate with Suzu right now. So Tracer was fine, but like Diva versus Winston, there were a lot of little things that made it a little bit tricky for her. Reaper does better with Kitsune, the ult, than Tracer does. Firing 1 trillion times melee range Reaper was just better than having 1 trillion blinks as Tracer. Like, it just was too overwhelming at that point. There wasn't a lot. So what ended up happening is that Tracer was fine, but then as teams started to play more Monkey, exactly Smithsonian, Reaper was better in the mirror. Remember what we said about chat, the 2 phases of the meta. The phase 1 is what is played because it's strong versus everything else. And then phase 2 is what's played because it's what's strong versus the meta. The original meta versus spam dive would have probably been something like Kiriko, Lucio, Winston, but then we probably would have seen Tracer versus spam. You might have even seen Tracer versus Brawl, because Reaper doesn't like Reinhardt very much, ironically. Tracer getting around to the backline would have been better. You might have even seen occasional Sombra maps, even with her being nerfed. Sombra Tracer might have been better than Sojourn versus some sniper comps, and so on. But as soon as things boil down to the mirror, people realize that Tracer doesn't really feel very good versus a lot of these heroes. Yeah, she can bully the Sojourn a little bit, but it doesn't feel very consistent, right? And the way the range that these fights are happening makes more sense with Reaper. And this is how it's always happened, chat. Remember Cyber Dive, right? We talked about the Sombra Reaper. Well, whenever you played Cyber Dive versus a Pharah composition, you swapped off Reaper. You went Tracer. Same thing happens here. Same thing here. Did they try Reaper Tracer? Siren, sorry. Some teams probably, yeah, as far as I know, some teams did, yeah. But again, you lost too much. The problem with Reaper Tracer is that in the neutral, your composition couldn't take angles to do early damage. When you dove, or that instance, you were powerful, but it was too hard to go really set tempo before the Sojourn whittled you down. And again, you also have to just consider raw hero strengths. Like Sojourn is just a strong hero right now. She's just strong. I hope all this is making sense. Goodness gracious. Do you have any other questions? Try and go like big picture questions if you can. I'm actually gonna pull up Overwatch League right now to see where we're at, because I want to be aware of time. Oh, it's not even live. We got all the time in the world, y'all. We got all the time in the world. So winner swaps necessary. Whenever there's something that it will probably be the Reaper will be the first swap versus anything that the enemy team plays that's weird or different. Reaper is good versus Winston and short range comps. If they're not playing that, then it's not going to be as good. If a team went Moira and not Kiriko, I would see no reason to play Moira over Kiriko. Moira does not survive more than Kiriko. Kiriko's shift is just as good, if not better. Moira does not heal more than Kiriko if a fight lasts longer than 10 seconds, and especially in a short range. Moira has worse ult economy. There's no reason. Kiriko is just what Moira should have been, to be honest with you. Glads made Doomfist work in a map. Why was that? Okay, well, you tell me. What is Doomfist good at? What is Doomfist good at? Don't. Right. I promise you, I wouldn't promise you. I would anticipate that they got value out. I did not watch the match. It was too late for me. I was in bed. I would anticipate that the Doomfist got value by displacing and possibly bullying Hadi. Because remember, he can exploit the downtime of Winston more and play to disrupt and ruin the value that they would try and get out of bubble. Hog is just a better ranged hero. And he's hard to just W key down and run down. I don't know why teams would run Hog in terms of the details, but that would be my initial guess. How does target priority work in this meta? Whoever doesn't have cooldowns available and is punishable, usually mid-fight. If the Kiriko has used her Suzu, if the Sojourn has used her Shift, and you have the capability and the cooldowns or the ultimates to keep going, you prioritize the first person that's good, it's a cooldown. Now, what often happens is a lot of teams put emphasis on the Reaper, because Reaper, once he doesn't have Shift, that's it, right? He wants to play in close range, so he's often closer to you. And then once he doesn't have his shift, if he doesn't shift to a safe location, he's a very, very punishable hero. What are the big cooldowns besides bubble that you have to play around this comp? Sojourn E, Reaper Wraith, Kiriko, usually her Suzu, Amp, bubble. Usually not fiery. Usually you don't see teams building up support ult as much as they used to because it takes too long compared to Overwatch 1. She isn't more popular because the AoE isn't. Yes, Echo is harder because a lot of maps do not allow her to chat. What's the cooldown on Echo Shift as well? But yeah, Echo is not as popular because there's not as much consistent pressure versus a Sojourn that can potentially shoot you out of the sky. So it really depends on the map. Also, Sojourn E has better offensive versus defensive uses than Sojourn cooldowns. Echo cooldowns. Echo cooldowns are a little bit more less flexible, I guess. Yeah. I'm behind on chat, y'all. Catching up. Why not play Tor, Brig, Bap, Orisa and just try to be as tanky as possible? The problem is that while it would be initially hard to dive a comp like that, eventually a Sojourn taking any off angle that she wants with a Lucio, a Kiriko taking any off angle that she wants and just holding mouse 1, because they would be able to take the entire map away from you because you're playing Tor, Brig, Bap, Orisa. You have no map control versus a dive comp at all. You'd have to clump up, Sojourn shooting on an angle, Kiriko shooting on an angle. Eventually, you're going to use a cooldown or two. You're going to have to because there's no cover. Meanwhile, the dive team can use all the cover they want. The second that you use cover or use a cooldown, use a Torbjorn E, your turret breaks, you force a Orisa fortify, you get isolated, you get dove on, you die. And the first ultimate that comes online is going to completely break that entirely. What does playing around Suzu look like? It just means that there's more of an opportunity for you to hard engage if they don't have Suzu, because the target that you're focusing, if they don't have a defensive cooldown, will die. A Suzu, a Sojourn that doesn't have shift, when the enemy team doesn't have Suzu, goodness gracious, usually can survive, usually won't be able to survive because she doesn't have a Suzu to fall back on. 6 seconds, right? Okay. Yeah, roll time. It's Sojourn E's are used to push, to kite, or in neutrals when you're going to get a lot of damage out of it, so that will give you an advantage to either push or kite afterwards. I do not think this comp is strong in solo competitive games. Yes, I think it has. It's tricky to execute, and the Reaper is the weak points because you're probably not going to be playing a mirror in ranked competitive games, but it has potential. Yes. Let's watch some right now. So I hope I've answered enough questions now to at least kind of like get you guys. Alindial, the dance thing. Remind me when we're after stream or on a break or something like that. I just want to stay focused for right now, or even next stream. I will not forget. Or you remind me. Okay. Oh yeah, turn stream on, chats. Turn stream on. It's live. Okay, let's check this out. So right here, check it. Corner advantage, big stuff. So Glads roll out here. Spitfire goes straight to point. Now, chat, the advantages of going here is that when point unlocks, you're there first. You get cap first. The disadvantages of going here is which DPS, let's put it this way, which Sojourn is more free? Which Sojourn is more free? Chat, this is unbelievable. There are like 6 fire engines. This is unbelievable. Okay. Which Sojourn is more free? Chat, there's another one coming. Kevser, right, exactly. Because they're stuck inside here, Kevser can take a more aggressive position, which means Kevser can do more damage. I actually like Gladiators' advantage in this fight. I think Gladiators have a passive advantage in this fight, just based on the fact that Kevser can go wherever he wants. So I would like to see Kevser swing right and go from there. Now, here's the thing with E here. I'm actually not super thrilled with either of their E's here. I would have preferred if Kevster was able to take a more aggressive angle and then use his E from a better position, or just to get better spam on Honey. Like, both teams are trying desperately to get an angle on the enemy squishies or the enemy tank without peeking the Sojourn, without peeking any other form of damage. Like right now, I really think Gladiators, because like here's the thing, if Kevster is able to get a better angle here and get more pressure out of this M1, Hadi can't stay here. He has to disengage, and when he disengages, he's lost HP, he's lost space, and then you can push afterwards with an already charged railgun as well. Okay. Now, here's the interesting thing. Here's the interesting thing. Do you see this? Huh. Do you see this? Now, this is punishable. This is punishable. But what's the problem here? If Spitfire don't clear this guy fast and force his TP and then dive him afterwards, what's the problem? Look at what's already happened. Do you see this? He's hit the shots. So guess what? Who's doing no damage right now, chat? Who's doing no damage right now? Sparker! Sparker's doing no damage. He zones their backline, so then now everybody else can start shooting Hadi. Hadi is going to lose more HP, and so on. Now you're thinking, obviously, this guy's not healing his team either, so there is a risk-cost-benefit analysis, risk-cost-benefit analysis. But you guys see what I'm saying, right? This is interesting. And there's the hard engage. Now, theoretically here, I actually really do think that Gladiators were set up for this fight better. I really do think that. I think Reaper was isolatable. Backbone shift gets forced. I think Kevster had a good off angle. I think Reiner had a good engage. It literally is just this. Like, look at this. This is really bad for a Spitfire, honestly. But one click, go burr, right? No, exactly. Humor. You can see how Gladiators were trying to use off angles there to try and put Spitfire on the back foot. That's what we call, that's what Egoist Cat calls a passive advantage, right? That's what it's finding positions that put the enemy team on the back foot if they don't respond immediately. Okay. Now, right here, Spitfire have the advantage because to walk out of the choke, they're going to have to start taking damage, which means Gladiators are going to take HP damage and get cooldowns forced earlier. Now, this is really quite bad from Kevster, to be frank with you. What's the problem here? What's the problem? Think about it. Now, the shift, I feel like he was to save his life and to try and farm up a little bit of charge. The shift will come back soon enough. But I want you to look at his cooldowns. 15 seconds, chat. 15 seconds. And this is the most important cooldown a Sojourn really has. At least, I mean, obviously, right? Like, the other ones just come off so fast. So this one's crucial. So now Spitfire could just chill, and Gladiators, if they want to push, do not have the E to zone backline. If they are going to be pushed, they do not have the E to peel. They have nothing. Do you see the positioning here, chat, from the Spitfire? Do you see how, again, turning this corner right now immediately means that Reiner gets chunked by Winston, gets chunked by Reaper? You see this? And they start taking damage from the Sojourn as soon as they turn the corner. There's the Winston jump, but guess what? Sparker doesn't even have to shift. Doesn't even have to shift. And what's the problem with the backline of the Gladiators right now? Wait, Sparker used his E as well? Oh, Sparker! Sparker should know better than this. Chat, I'm not impressed by these E's so far. Right now, this is where you need E. This is where we need E. You hit the E right in this corner, This has a much higher chance of forcing Reaper Wraith. It zones the Lucio back. It prevents the Kiriko, because you're thinking, oh, well, Kiriko doesn't care about because the E, because she's just going to TP. Kiriko doesn't want to use her TP. Kiriko wants to walk forward and shoot and heal without having to use her TP. Kiriko was going to heal, but she's not going to be able to do damage. Kevster will have to take an off angle. Kevster will not be able to peek out with his team. This E is crucial. This E is crucial on this choke because the team fight has started. We need our E to use to control space. It doesn't always have to be on the core, but this is the window right here. It's gone. So bubble from Hadi is fine, right? He's placed it once they committed. Hadi uses bubble. Hadi uses bubble. That means Hadi can stay here and zone 4 members of the Gladiators while Reiner goes in here. But the difference is that Reiner can die, Hadi cannot. Why? Well, Hadi has his jump. Reiner does not. Spitfire have better off angles. Gladiators do not. So even if Reiner doesn't die here, the advantage is there. And this thing about why does Funny Aster die? Why does Funny Aster die, guys? Does he just get picked? Well, why does he get picked? Why? He's zoned, he gets railgunned, but he's trying to push up to get value to help poor Reiner out, and as is the Reaper, because if they just hide in here, Reiner dies. They have to do something, but doing something is a risk. And Sparker hits the shot, and they die. And that's what happens. And you can even see it in the HP trait here. Hadi gets out and is able to get the full. Reiner gets out, but he's 1 HP. And now Spitfire, even if they didn't have a mana advantage, will be able to walk forward. Sojourn just ruins his comp, man. Drives me nuts. And there's always things like this. Mechanical plays, I'm being kind of facetious. Mechanical plays are a part of every composition here. Now, this is interesting, chat. This is the flip side of the Sojourn E. I want you guys to tell me, is this a good or a bad Sojourn E? Think about it for a second. This is the tricky thing. This is where the nuance with Sojourn E comes from. Good, but they're using it before a push happened, right, chat? So it's bad, right? Thank you, Wayne. So here's the thing. If Sparker can place his E pre-fight in a location and take an angle that prevents them from ever healing back up again, it's good. If, like, I would like, if for example, if they are able to place this E here, if Sparker's able to place this E here, and he's allowed to keep up consistent and constant pressure while the E is active, Gladiators won't be able to just restabilize. Do you see? The problem is using E pre-fight, where the enemy team can just dip out, heal up, and then push out afterwards. The Glads can't do that here. The Glads can't do that here. In fact, we can go even bigger brain. The Glads want to push here because they're down 1. But this E makes it awkward. It makes it really awkward. Look at Happy. Look at Happy, guys. Look at Happy. Every little bit, right? Watch. Happy wants to push. We can't stabilize here. A little bit of damage. The big one here is the direct pressure on Reiner right as he wants to jump. Watch his HP. Takes about 80, 90, 100 armor before he dives. And remember, chat, remember, we talked about the E in this choke. The E in this choke, it's not just about the direct pressure. Look at what Glads have to do. Watch the E. Ready? Do you see? This Kiriko doesn't want to play here. This Kiriko wants to swing to the next corner, but they have to be careful. It's awkward to play around. Do you see this? So it's the indirect pressure that forces the Glads to play differently around it. And then it's the early pressure right as the dive happens. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't think this E was perfect. I don't. I'm defending this E because it's not a bad E, and it's because it's a different type of E, which I think is worth understanding, which is these pre-fight E's that get so much pressure that the enemy team can never really stabilize. But it is worth noting this. Now, the question here, would it have been more valuable to E here, on the Kitsune, on top of the Winston and the Reaper?
Monk Gaming.
Would it have been better to E now to zone off the Sojourn? Would it have been better to throw E on the Kiriko? Probably one of these options would have been better. Thank you for the sub, Snackister. But you need to understand what I'm talking about. It is not as binary as the enemy team goes in or we go in and IE. There are other times where the opportunity is so big to put out early pressure that it's okay to take it. I think at least part of the value was intended to destabilize Reiner from pushing, to zone backline, and to buy time for Backbone coming back. Those were clearly the intentions. Okay. Okay. Let's watch here. There's the E. I don't know why we used E here. Was this anticipating a Sojourn one shot or somebody was low? I frankly don't know. I really frankly don't know. I think, well, I know he was planning to open with Kiriko ultimate, which means you're going to see more teams utilize their Suzus, their E's, their bubbles before Kiriko ultimate, because it puts the cooldown on cooldown and then you get it back sooner afterwards. So that's the only reason I can see why that's done that. The pre-Kitsune because he's about to ult. But still, because you're going to see he gets it back 3 times as fast. There it is, right? By the way, chat, I guess this is a replay bug. Do you see the Kitsune? Look, 11 seconds, 10 seconds, 9 seconds, 8 seconds, and then he has it. So the Kiriko ultimate in the replay viewer is bugged. Good to know. Now, chat, it had 100% had to do with maybe he's anticipating a Sojourn shot. Maybe he's just... I know, chat. I know why he did it. 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 I know why he did it because I've seen teams do this with Monkey Bubble. I've seen teams do this with Monkey Bubble to bait the enemy team to engage so that then they can Death Blossom. He baited Gladiators. This was on purpose. I would bet 75-80% that this was on purpose. He wastes his Suzu and baits him into jumping. Watch Reiner. Watch Reiner. There it is. Let's go. He doesn't have it. Then there's the Kitsune rush. I promise you that was on purpose. And what that might do, now obviously they're down Backbone, so it ends up not being like a crazy payoff. And also they match the Kitsune as well. But interesting. Okay. Let's check the timing here. Oh, Backbone's screwed. Backbone is screwed. Ah! Okay, so this is a really good point. What do you guys think of this beat? Reiner was potentially going to jump in anyway. Potentially. But what that does is that baits Reiner in to go probably more aggressively than he would otherwise, which allows London the better opportunity to punish and kill. Yes. Too early. Spitfire are not going to be able to push off of this. They're going to try to push, but Gladiators are going to be able to easily disengage. What I would like to see is walking forward, bubble cooldown trade, then beat. It's risky with the Sojourn ult, but unfortunately, London was just not in a position to actually push this, so this beat is going to be DOA. Now, let's look at cooldowns again here. I'm really not impressed by these Sojourn E's from Kevster at all. I'm consistently disappointed. I don't know what he sees here, to be honest with you. I don't know what he sees, because London can so very easily wait this out. And now you would love to plant your Sojourn E right on this choke. It would make it literally impossible for them to clear Reiner if you put your Sojourn E now. This is no longer a questionable E, which I had with Sparker's E. This is a bad E. It's a bad E. It's bad. Okay, so here comes a cooldown trade. This is a fine bubble from Reiner because let's look at what Reiner reacts to, okay? He doesn't just push bubble. There's no reason for Gladiators to push. They control the point here, right? They're fine. So what happens is then as Hadi goes in, Reiner responds, zoning backline. It's the tables have turned with what happened here, okay? Except the difference is the Reiner has shift. Hadi just used his shift. This is actually really great from London, by the way, target focus wise. That's actually really, really great. Lucius, in a lot of ways, is the squishiest hero if you can catch him in an awkward time. But yeah, this is really, really quite good. Let's watch the rest of Glads here. So good zoning from Reiner. I'm a little. Where was Happy? What was Happy doing, chat? What was Happy doing? So a lot of Reapers will just simply play the corner and then basically try and trade the monkey as he goes out and/or zone backline with their monkey. Happy might have been trying to pre-pressure out Hadi. Yeah. So Happy is getting pre-pressure on Hadi, and actually Happy ends up doing a pretty darn good job of it too, because this is why you play the Reaper, right? Because the monkeys wants to engage. So if the Reaper plays good timing and doesn't get poked out early, which right now there's no way for anybody to poke out Happy early, look at Hadi's HP here. 392 with armor, loses over 100 HP, and crucially loses all of his armor before engage. And Happy doesn't even play that one very mechanically well. If Happy one plays that one's even cleaner, Hadi dies basically instantly. So that was really good. And now, here's the thing, chat. Chat, listen. Where should Happy go now? Where should Happy go now? Ooh, it's tricky, isn't it? This is the answer, okay? This is a trick question. It depends. If he's close to his backline, peeling monkey is good value. But if he's got a really great corner here, I see no reason why he shouldn't just zone backline. I would agree. I think backline is probably the play here, given where he's positioned, and the fact that he also has Death Blossom as well. Now, here's the question, chat. Why does Funny Astro die? Let's actually figure out what he is. Now, this is a great play from Admiral here. Watch Admiral. He goes through the window and bumps. I think he boops Astro off the wall. I'm pretty sure. Let me watch this again. So Admiral beefs it with the beat. Oh no, he doesn't even boop him. He just hits the shots. So yes, this is a misplay from Astro. Astro isolates himself off the wall. I'm also questioning the amp usage as well here. You can tell that this is relative. I think it's because he goes for the aggressive boop. So then he's like, oh, shoot, 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 shoot. So then he doesn't have amp. I mean, maybe the boop wasn't worth it if it's going to cost your amp. And then also he gets caught in bubble. And that's it, right? We're not able to get there in time. Okay, so that's a mistake from Astro, 100%. Okay, but big shots from Happy, big Death Blossom zones backline, which isolates, well, actually kills Landon, but it's going to isolate any of the backline. It's going to split. It's just over. Like, space is so hard to retake with these compositions. You see this with Junker Queen comp as well. Why does Reiner primal? Pretty clearly unnecessary, but he just doesn't want Sparker to pop off, which is understandable. And it costs him an ult for an ult, so that's not necessarily a bad trade. Okay. I think the panic amp, I think both, to be frank with you, Hermegans, to be both. Now, this is what we talked about, right, chat? This is what we talked about. Look at the pre-pressure here. Look at Kevster's positioning. Kevster and Shu's positioning means they will do more damage to London as they walk out of the choke than they would if they simply sat inside the Reaper on the corner. The weakness is that they can be isolated and killed or get their defensive cooldowns forced, but theoretically, if you're playing the hero correctly, you don't need to. The problem here, chat, and probably why Astro uses Beat, is he messes up his shift. You see this? Instead of shifting out or towards the Lion and just farming the Winston, he actually shifts into the wall. The other thing here, if we're being really nitpicky, obviously there wasn't a lot of opportunity to do this, but I actually think there's an opportunity here that this E, that a better Sojourn here throws E right on this choke. As soon as that Winston commits, the E needs to be planted right here and then land the shift. Kevster misses both. So he misses both the E and he misses the shift. That E is fine, but it's late. And it doesn't even actually exactly hit where he wants to hit. And so what ends up happening is the beat is for nothing, the shift is for nothing, the E is for nothing. And Happy ends up turning on the monkey, even though he's in a good position to actually pressure backline. Like, look at Reiner right here. You see this? I really do think that the distance between Happy and Hadi means that Happy should be going for backline here, but he turns on Hadi. Hadi also has Primal Rage, which means that I don't think he's a priority kill right now. I think this is a mistake. I think this is a mistake. Happy should be with Reiner. So Sojourn shouldn't need Beat to survive. Hadi creates so much space with this jump. It's actually absurd. Does Hadi even need to hold here? Nah, I really don't think he does, honestly. To be honest with you, I really don't think he does. I think he could have played Bubble and played Statue and lasted a good 2 or 3 seconds, probably 2 or 3 seconds longer, and then ulted the last second anyway. I see no opportunity to get kills out of this jump at all. So not a great play from Hadi here, but honestly, like, really, really big beef here. Is Suzu DMable? Yes, it is. So I think Reiner actually makes the right play here, but his zoning just doesn't do anything. Like, also, look what Reiner does. Reiner doesn't wait until he's 1 HP to jump out either. His bubble breaks, he jumps out immediately. Why? Because if he starts losing too much armor, it's going to take forever to heal back up again. So this is a disaster from Glad's perspective. Look at the space that Spitfire got out of a 1-for-1 ult trade. And what happens with Happy's shift, excuse me. What's the problem here, chat? This is why some teams are going to do well in this meta and some teams are not. What's the problem here? I'm coaching a Gold Reaper. 1v3. Where is Reiner? Here, Reiner's out. Now, before you guys get your opinion formed on Happy, and Happy's a bad Reaper, Happy's a stupid player. No. The reason these mistakes happen is because the in and out mentality, all in, all out, the timing is a crucial team skill to build, right? You have to understand these things, and you have to be able to communicate these things mid-fight. Why Dallas, I don't know how good Dallas is now, but why Dallas is always, initially at least, good at these comps immediately is because Dallas has always been one of the best teams in the world at staying on the same page, especially mid-fight. And right here, whether it's Kevster screaming, whether it's Reiner not calling well enough, or whether it's confusion, could be language barrier. I wouldn't even say language barrier because there's a lot of things happen, even like only English speaking teams or only Korean speaking teams. There's confusion. Happy doesn't get the memo. Reiner doesn't get the memo. People get on different pages. And what happens is, the chat, here's the thing with this comp. Happy shouldn't die from this. But even if Happy doesn't die here, he's gonna have to shift out. And what did it cost London to force his shift? I mean, really nothing. He just kind of gave it to him. Way too easy of a kill for London. I mean, even again, the mistake there isn't even necessarily that Happy should have shifted earlier. He's dead. He's already dead at that point. But when you give away your shift that easily, either you're a complete non-factor the rest of the fight because you have to play like a scaredy cat, or you die immediately afterwards. Reiner is isolated. Reiner has to get out. Bubble advantage coming up soon. Now, I actually really do not like this from Hadi. I do not like this from Hadi. Hadi can do better than this. Bubble advantage. He's screaming, bubble diff, push, 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 push. But there's no rush. There's no rush whatsoever. They're going to maintain a bubble advantage for the next 8 seconds. Not to mention a man advantage. There's really no reason for this. This is Hadi being greedy, to be honest with you guys. Hadi is better than this. Hadi should have walked forward, gotten healed to full, and waited literally 2 seconds, and then done an actual proper deep dive. He does not. I don't like this. That allows, the problem with this is it allows Gladiators to theoretically stabilize because the monkey's off of the timing of the rest of the team. See, Hadi is no longer a factor, and then now they want to keep pushing, but look at Backbone. Backbone's wraithing in without Hadi, right? That's a good Sojourn E with good Reaper timing, but that's bad timing off of Hadi. You needed to be more patient. Yeah, needed to be more patient. Okay, let's actually look at the Sojourn E here. Surely Kevster gives me a good E. Yeah, that E is fine. Okay, I mean, it didn't really matter, but yeah, okay. So we're talking a lot about the neutral. It's about setting up your Sojourn, your Kiriko, and so on to get as... Oh, wait. Unfortunate. It's about setting up your Sojourn and Kiriko to get as much early pressure as possible to force cooldowns, and then whichever team is on the same page, whether it's in, whether it's out, whether it's in, whether it's out. So far, we've seen missed timings, missed cooldowns as being a big problem with teams when it comes to losing fights. It's not. There's only been maybe one fight, that initial headshot onto the Kiriko, that was decided by mechanics. Everything else has been about team play, staying on the same page with the ins and with the outs. One of the big dangers when you mess up the timing is that it becomes too easy to force your cooldowns out. And when it becomes too easy to force your cooldowns out, then you lose the advantage later on. Yes, sort of team player. Sometimes teams will just hit flow state where their mental game is on point and their communication is on point. It's a simple enough fix to where it can be fixed mid-fight. But yes, kind of, sort of. And honestly, more time isn't always going to be a good... If you have a player that's just not listening well, playing more isn't necessarily going to fix it. Yeah. It's kind of a tricky question. Yes and no. I mean, this is a mess, to be honest with you. This is a really ugly fight from London. This is just greed, to be honest with you. So you guys tell me, what is the problem with this engage from London? Tell me. What's the problem? Wait, I mean, it's not just Hadi. Hadi is definitely off of his team's timing, right? So Hadi ends up not getting beat, doesn't get value of the Kiriko, and then now Hadi's off of timing. But yeah, it is mostly Hadi timing here, I would agree. But again, it's a mess. It's a mess. This is why the timing has to be tight. Hadi is out when he should be in, right? And let's look at the Sojourn E here from Kevster. Surely Kevster will have a good Sojourn E, right? Yes. Very impactful Sojourn E. London do not want to push through this. And if you look at Sparker's Sojourn E, he doesn't have it yet, first off. That Sojourn E is actually pretty reasonable, right? Zoning off backline. But yeah, that's actually really unfortunate. This is what happens when you have numerous heroes with defensive cooldowns. If you mess up your timing, they will be able to escape. Why was Hadi so far away in the first place? Good question. Actually, I'm not too sure. Oh, he's dead. He's coming back from spawn. He's like, let's go, tempo. But it's timing. Now, here's the question, chat. Whose fault is this? And this is why it's impossible. Well, actually, I'll tell you. Whose fault is this? Who should we blame? Who made the mistake? Exactly. It's impossible to say. And I'm not saying that to be cornball, like it's never an individual error, it's a team error. Guys, sometimes, most errors are individual errors and not team errors necessarily. But the problem is as a viewer, I don't know. I don't know. Hadi could have communicated this really well and said, guys, go, 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 go. And can we go? And the enemy, and his team says, sure, 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 sure. But then they didn't communicate it well. And so Hadi is expecting something a second and a half ago, and it didn't happen. You see? So team coordination was a major issue here. Maybe it was we were over eager, coordination, whatever. But it is not necessarily Hadi's fault. All right? Very important to know that. To note that. Actually, a fight-winning boop from Funny Aster right here. Check this out, y'all. Not particularly hard, but that saves his life, and that's gonna win them the fight. He gets the kill, he gets the beat. All right, it's crazy. Okay. Disaster from London. 2 extremely powerful ultimates, and they lose the fight to basically just poor teamwork. Okay. Glads also make the same mistake here. Check this out from Reiner. Reiner's like, guys, go, 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 go. We have an advantage. We have an advantage. We have an advantage. He pushes really aggressive. Glads are slow on the push. I'm not sure why they're so slow. Why are they so slow? Is it literally they just couldn't catch up? Happy's too hesitant. I actually don't even think Reiner's jump was necessarily a problem, but there's a big timing issue here, right? Where Backbone essentially by himself is able to zone like 3 people. That's like just really kind of absurd. And so then Backbone disengages. Oh, almost got the... Wait, what does he hit? Does he hit the ledge? He hits the ledge, y'all. Haha.